Hello, good evening. Thank you for coming. I have a feeling straight away that there's going to be one person who's going to be the absolute star of this evening, which is Father Bob. And also Luke, but, you know, Father Bob, we were just having a chat upstairs, and he's just such a great character. Father Bob, I would like to ask you, when did you first hear from Luke, and how did the process of your portrait start? What was the first thing?
12 months ago?
12 months, thank you, Luke. Because you get a little bit dementia, you know what I mean? We've all got it now, apparently, it's compulsory. It's fashionable to have it, you know what I mean? So, I mean, thank you for reminding me of that. 12 months.
Yeah, about 12 months ago.
Yeah, 12 months.
Okay, so what?
There was an inquiry first, I think, by, was it you or somebody else?
I met him at an opening in Melbourne about 12 months ago. But I had the idea to paint him a few years ago, and kind of didn't really think about it till I saw him, and I thought I should get onto that.
Yeah.
Before it's too
Cut away
late.
from there.
Yeah. No, I know, it's all, I'm not, you know.
See what I mean?
I'm not.
Yeah.
Hey, so Luke, what is it about Father Bob and Father Bob's demeanour and his being that attracted you to him?
It's just so cranky.
Cranky.
He is. But that's what everyone loves about him.
Cranky.
There's just no bullshit to who he is. He's not...
Not intelligent or anything like that? I mean, couldn't we...
I don't mean it like that. I just mean there's no
sorry.
pretension to who he is, and that's...
Just talking to me.
I think that's a breath of fresh air these days.
Father Bob, would you like to defend yourself against this?
No, because
Are
I mean,
you
I've
happy with
always
that?
believed it's easier. You know, let them do what they like, you know. Because I can't see any virtue in what we present ourselves as who. I mean, who are we in the first place? I like to, but I mean, I expect that others will make up their minds one way or the other who you are. I mean, titles I don't think you give yourself. Like, I remember being shocked when I was in the army. Somebody introduced himself, "Excuse me, I'm Major General John Smith." And I thought, no, you're not. Who the hell do you think you are, you know? I mean, you can't call yourself by a title. I am His Eminence Cardinal. You can't do that, see, because it's got to be a given. You know, now who is Bob Maguire? I'm interested, that's all. I mean, I'd like to know before it's over who I am. So you get various, you know, he's a fraud, cheat and liar, he's a media, what's the word?
Personality.
Whore. No, not whore, the other one.
Tart.
Thank you. Media tart. Or he's a pinko leftist, or as George calls us, cafeteria Catholics. You know, I mean, I'm interested because there is... And you can respond to that. And when Luke... I was interested in the fact that it was not going to be conventional. It was going to be an art form of its own. You know, that interested me.
What, stencil art?
Yeah, of its own. You know, I mean, it wasn't going to just be sitting there and some bloke would go... So this was going to be something that came out of some part of Luke Cornish, you know, so be heart to heart, so to speak. And the Archbishop's name, as you know, is Heart, isn't it? So that attracted me, and also because of the, he won't like this, but because of the street art component, simply because we were working on... Me and my social activist group were working with street kids for 30, 40 years, you know, and I considered life on the street to be a work of art that not many people get to see. They see the other thing, you know, and there I got a soft spot for the artistic aspect of that environment. And so Luke reminded me of maybe an obligation to submit myself to...
But you've had your portrait painted quite a few times, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Luke, how do you? Because Father Bob is such a famous figure, both in his work but also in your appearance, Father Bob, and you can't get away from
Scottish, you see.
You're a famous face. You're a famous Australian.
Well, you've plastered it all over the state, apparently. I mean, it's not mine. I'm not.
This is going on the internet. We better wave to the internet
as well. Hello, internet.
So actually, Luke, how do you? I mean, there's Father Bob's cantankerousness, although I do suspect that that's only skin deep.
But that's what everyone loves about him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how do you sort of get beyond that? Like, how do you get beyond the image of Father Bob to a deeper image?
I think I know Bob from his work with John Safran and on Triple J. So it was more to do with his comedy than his community work. Really.
So did you kind of get to know Father Bob actually in an oral sense more than visually?
We've spent a little bit of time together.
Yeah.
Since we met, yeah.
Yeah, but before that, I mean.
Yeah, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way
What
of
about
getting
your grandfather?
Well,
You keep saying, banging on it. You didn't mention to these lovely people
Sorry,
tonight.
guys.
The grandfather.
He reminds me a lot of my grandfather.
Thank you.
Finally, we get it out of you, Luke.
Well, my grandfather passed away about 10 years ago, which was before I really had the chance to get to know him. So it's kind of been nice to spend a bit of time with Bob to get the opportunity I didn't have 10 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
What sort of relationship would you say you had now with Father Bob? Like,
I guess it's the same as I'd have with my grandpa. He's just cranky and I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, and it's platonic.
It is.
See, none of that Sydney business.
What are you getting at?
Okay, maybe we should move on now, Father Bob. Okay,
new show. We could have a whole new show. No, I'm being.
I'm not sure which channel it would go on. Hey, so you agreed to have your portrait painted, and what happened next?
We met up at his parish in South Melbourne and had a sitting, took some photos and had some lunch. I think it was.
Did I give you lunch? Oh, that was you had that on that
7-11,
camera. It was all on camera.
7-11 sandwiches.
Half a focaccia, I think you got.
Just half.
Half. Yeah.
He is an artist.
Well, it was mine. So
He's
generous I am. You know what I mean?
We're both kind of broke.
And he's an artist. They're supposed to be poor. Aren't you?
That's why
they can't eat. They can't do this. They can't do that.
It's got to all be directed into the art, not looking after your money. So you had lunch, and then what happened?
Took some photos and went on my way.
I sat.
He sat for me. Did some sketches and just went from there.
And how, like, when you're painting somebody's portrait, how do you get the person to relax and kind of so that you can see who they really are?
It wasn't too hard with him.
No.
No.
But also, I mean, the stencil art in its own right, shut me up if I'm saying the wrong thing here, but I mean, you don't have to sit for too long.
Mm-hmm.
So
the relationship is different with stencil art, isn't it? I mean, who am I to tell you, for God's sake?
Can you talk us through the process of making the portrait, Luke?
So I take the image and then blow it up and cut the stencils from that image. So I did 30 odd stencils to cut heads. So it's layered up on the canvas.
Yeah.
So it's very different to traditional painting, but it is 2012. Surely we can start trying some new things.
Yeah. And am I correct in saying that you are the first artist to do this type of work that's got into the finals of the Archibald?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
The first street artist.
Yeah. Now, I sort of feel like there's a little bit of an elephant in the room, the whole street artist thing.
Sure.
Would you like to clear it up for us?
I've never referred to myself as a street artist. I've just been sort of labelled street art. I do street art, but it's very hard to explain to people that I'm not a street artist, if you know what I mean.
No, explain some more. So you do street art?
I'm a stencil artist. So stencil art is the medium, with street art is just the arena that it's shown in. So I really don't do that much work on the street. And that's only because I do so much in galleries these days. Okay. And once art is in a gallery, it's no longer street art.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But I think also, I mean, I don't let me interrupt, but it's also a generational thing as far as I'm concerned. You know, galleries and art and blah, blah, blah. My generation, more or less, understands that, and the next generation after us, of course, and the next one, revels in it, you see, as one of the pillars of wisdom in our society. There's another generation, his generation, and the one coming on, that's even, what's the word, stranger. I mean, it's fascinating to me, but, you know, there's so many wide people around, and I keep joking about this, that at baptism of a baby, I said to her, you'll notice the baby, this model baby, has got a longer thumb, which they take seriously, unfortunately, because I said the baby is already born to text. You see? Designed. Look at this. You know, the evolution of but this is the evolution he represents to me, the evolution of this marvellous generation. Whatever, are you X or what? Or Y? Is he Y
no,
or X?
I'm X. What's 79?
X. You know,
when were you born, Luke?
79?
Oh, okay, yes, I think you are Y, yeah.
Y.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that generation to me as an old person in a young country, only 100, what is it, we 200 years old, which is nothing. Mm. But this generation, his generation, and the one afterward, to me, speaks very loudly as a very compassionate / artistic generation.
Compared to you guys, we are.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, we only shed our blood. That's a joke, all right? Because they think because they forget. Because Saffron's always reminding me, anything that's more than 25 years ago, Bob, don't bore the listeners. 25 years ago. But I mean, I'm thinking more of the future for them, that that they give you hope for the future.
We got to clean up your mess.
All right, we can. No political meetings.
Actually, I would just like to say, Father Bob, that you give us a hope for the future. You know, you're not gone yet.
Oh well, I mean, I'm Scottish. You see, that's the whole point of the portrait. In fact, you see, if you look at that thing, he drags me into the studio. What do you think of that? What am I going to say?
So what happened when you did?
He did. He dragged me into the studio.
Yeah. Okay.
Didn't you?
Yeah.
Come in here. And down there, I mean, he's ruder than I am. You know? No tact. Manners, respect but no reverence. The Aussie motto, you know. But there's the thing. It's around the corner there somewhere, or it's downstairs. Yeah. And I looked and I thought, well, what the... Because that's depicted, you see, when you won't, and it's boring, that my history with church authorities, but that portrait showed how I felt.
I thought you liked it.
You see? I'm not saying I liked it. I don't like being run over by a tank, which is what they did, you know. Like that poor little bugger in Tiananmen Square. Remember him? He said, don't run over. Well, they didn't. But in my case, they did. You see? So when I got up off the ground, that's how I looked. Is the patron, flattened, but at the same time with a bit of Scottish whatever it is in it, that says, well, you might think we're down, but we're not out. And we're going to declare Scottish independence, aren't we? We are in a minute against those bloody British, you know, who thought they'd run over us, but guess what, folks? You know?
Hey, so Father Bob...
So that's what I see, because, you know, at my age, one needs, and especially being Roman Catholic priest, for God's sake, when one into, you know, and this is our problem, one of the current problems of Roman Catholic clergy is, in fact, that we've had our, personality... wrung out of us. Right. So you end up in all kinds of, you know, emotional predicaments, some of which are ghastly, and some of which, according to Sydney this morning, are understandable, but there's still emotional minefields. So it's very hard to know who you are.
And seeing this magnificent portrait of you...
C'est moi.
But did you see something else in the portrait that you sort of thought?
Well,
actually, there is
someone
that.
else said, I suppose I saw something that, I don't know what's it called, resilience or something, which you need reinforcing. You need reassurance, sorry. It reassured me too, see, because it reassured me that I wasn't dead. You know what I mean? Which the forces of whatever it is that tend to want you to, the quicker the better. So he does marvellous work, I was told by the Archbishop. Marvellous work, God, he does marvellous, but not there. You see? And I couldn't, what if he does marvellous work? Well, then why would you move, you know? But that's what happens, you see. So there's a bit of shock and there's a bit of whatever it is. There's a bit of, there's a bit of intent. You know what I mean? Scottish intent. That you'll be there and you'll stay there.
And Luke, you know? did it? Like, what would you have done?
We're losing the audience. Quick, keep.
What would you have done if Father Bob had said, actually, I just don't like that at all. That doesn't resonate with me.
I still would have chucked it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just maybe a little bit.
Only because I still would have chucked it in because I spent so much time on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but luckily he didn't.
Yeah, luckily he liked it.
Yeah.
I'd have no intention of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because once the game's afoot, isn't it? As Shakespeare said, isn't it? The game's afoot. The rabbits are running.
And,
you know?
and
that's the miracle of life, for God's sake, isn't it? That you I mean, if you want to control everything, you know, I mean, that's not life, for God's sake. It's the beauty and the creativity of chaos. You know, I'm a great believer in creative chaos. People say, it's chaotic. The way you do things is chaotic. I said, well, have another look, comrade. And you'll probably find creative chaos, which I presume art is all, isn't it? I presume.
Father Bob, you spoke of compassion just a while ago,
yeah.
and Luke, I was wondering whether that's an important emotion when you're painting somebody's portrait, to have a feeling of compassion.
I think artists are a pretty empathetic bunch.
Yep.
Yeah. I think, it is trying to get into the psyche of Bob and try and find out who he is to translate that onto canvas.
When he sat for you, did you talk, actually, Father Bob, or was it a pretty silent session?
We
I don't know, we talk, I think you mutter.
Yeah.
You know,
So
it's
that you
called,
don't
what is
send
it
me
called
too
in the
much.
trade? You're all experts at this. Banter, isn't it? You know, we've got to be able to banter now. You can't say anything deadly serious unless you're full of banter. You know, the old days we would have said full of bullshit, isn't it? But I mean, now it's banter is the cement that you can't, you know, there's a whole craft out now called TED, isn't it? Where you're supposed to talk deeply and meaningfully, but only 18 minutes.
Actually, it's 10, Father Bob.
Is it
Sorry
10?
to disappoint you, yeah.
Is TED
Yeah, it's
10, not 18?
10 minutes.
But
Yep.
you've got to be technologically, savvy,
Yep.
and you've got to be entertaining.
But you tweet. You're the master of,
yes, but
140 characters or fewer.
Infotainment, I accept as being. I can't see any other way, unfortunately, of getting the message across. And this is thank you. You see, because he gives me a chance once again to get the message across. The message is not got nothing to do with me. The message has got to do with us. You know, like the boxer. What's his name?
Muhammad Ali.
You remember that? You know,
Yeah.
when
We made a movie about it.
Huh?
We made a movie about it.
Yeah, you did. I saw it on the thing. But I mean, when some cheeky student was it Harvard? I think they had him there as a guest speaker, and do you remember that? Some kid yelled out from give us a poem to him, you know, and they'd still be laughing, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. He's only a boxer. He wouldn't know a poem if it fell on his head. But he then said, did he say, and I fight over this, we, me?
Me, we.
Well, I keep saying it's we, me. I want that. But I think it probably is me, we. It suits my philosophy, that's all I'm saying. There's no me without we. You know what I mean? I can't understand any. You know, I'm not. There's no Bob Maguire. You know, I have to look at bloody paintings to see c'est moi, you know. But it doesn't matter to me because it's the we. You know, the environment. That's what the world, you know. So that little poem gets me a little bit spiritually excited. The idea that that we're all in this together. Now, if he, thank you, wants to use me as part of his journey, well, then I'm more than grateful. If somebody sees it and says, oh, this poor old bugger, you know, we thought he was full of, you know what? But here it looks as though the poor old bugger might have another side to him. You know what I mean? Which is deadly serious. You know?
So
but not
Luke,
for long.
Luke, do you feel like your thinking about the world has changed since your relationship with Father Bob has developed?
Oh, my world has entirely.
Yeah.
Just with the media attention surrounding this piece. I don't know what sparked that, but it's just the whole art career's blown up in the last 2 months.
Yep.
Yeah. And I joke that he's cranky. I painted him because he's cranky, but I think it's a little bit more intrinsic than that. I don't really question it. I just knew that it was right.
Do you feel that you'll have an ongoing relationship now with each other?
We chat on the phone sometimes.
No, we can't. I'm terribly sorry.
You're quite busy, Father.
I live alone. Yes. The dog's waiting to be fed now.
Yeah, and you've got to do your tweeting. Hey, Luke, also I wanted to ask you, because you do kind of sit between street art and gallery art.
Yeah, I'm kind of wedged firmly between the two.
Yeah, which is a nice sort of...
It's a good spot to be. It's a happy medium because I get interest from each side, which is, it's kind of nice.
So why did you decide to enter the Archibald?
I haven't been asked that before. Maybe, I don't know, I guess it was just the next logical step. I didn't think for a million years I'd actually get into the Archibalds, but it was always maybe nice to have on the CV that I'd entered. Yeah. So it really feels like a bit of a Disney movie that I got into this, because like no street artist had ever, or stencil artist had ever gotten in. So yeah, I didn't think it would happen.
Father Bob, is there a sort of Roman Catholic equivalent of the Archibald Prize?
No, there used to be a thing early days, I remember the 60s. What was that? The Blake.
That's still around.
But then it was specifically, wasn't it, religious art.
Okay.
And then, of course, I think somebody woke up to the fact that this is Australia, and therefore probably you should be talking about spirituality rather than religion. And then it broadened, you know, so that so many things that we do, I think Australians are probably one of the most spiritual nations on earth, but not religious. Don't mention religion, for God's sake, you know, because we can stand respect, but we can't stand reverence. You know what I mean? Which kicks religion out, because religion is all about reverence and not often about respect. You know what I mean? So there was the Blake. I remember some beautiful things done for the Blake. But then again, if you walk through the gallery here, I would say there's marvellous works of spirituality.
Yep.
I presume that's what art is, a free range, isn't it? You know? Whereas religion tends to make art, what do you call it, a battery hens. What do you call that?
Yeah, battery hens.
Yeah, battery hens, whereas the other is free range.
You know the
is
way...
that all right?
But you know the way you and Luke, so Luke's there between stencil art and gallery art, and you're sometimes considered a little bit of an outsider in a way from the Roman Catholic Church. Are there things about...
But I'm not, you see. That's their problem.
Okay.
The problem is I'm not, you see.
Yep.
And they wish to God I would leave, because it would solve the problem for them. But you see, I'm Scottish. You know, and the motto, Robert Bruce, was probably something like, if you can't convince them, confuse them. You know? So that's all. I just live in hope that...
Do you ever wish, Father Bob, that your career had been different? Do you ever wish that you'd been more on the inside, in a way?
On the inside?
Well, sort of institutionally.
Oh, yeah, but look, the Institute, I mean, she's a funny old show, Catholicism. I mean, I'm talking now to a mob that ran Occupy Melbourne and Occupy Wall Street and all that, and I'm saying, well, maybe the go now is to occupy Catholicism. I mean, the 99% are entitled to take the church, you know. It's theirs, for God's sake. I can't... Except we're the successors of the Roman Empire, which means everything's going to be like that. You see, it's hard to wriggle out, you know. I mean, any Monty Python fans? We thank the Romans for the aqueducts and for, don't we, and for the roads and everything else, but the price you pay for that can be enormous, you know, loss of personal, you know. And that then, of course, would, I think, probably be seen in the change in art, in churches and things. You see, because we were becoming experimental, weren't we? And then all of a sudden the doors have been shut and we've become, you can only have those statues, you can only have those paintings, you can only have those songs, you can only have this, you can only have that. That's the Roman way, you see. But for 5 minutes the window was open and we ran away. And Caravaggio type freedom. But she's a funny show. Don't go, folks, because I think there's more in Catholicism than we've seen. Like the next act would in fact be spectacular if in fact you've got an act of global repentance. You know, Specky. For sale sign outside of... You know what I mean?
Luke, do you feel that there's a kind of artistic equivalent to Roman Catholicism in terms of the institution of Western art, that there are certain rules?
Maybe street art.
Yeah?
Due to the numbers of people doing it, yeah. It's pretty big. No, I don't know. I can't answer that.
But you were saying off air that there's as much institutionalism in art as
I
there
guess
is in religion.
there are
He
similarities.
said that off air.
We were talking about this before.
Yeah, because you did just say also about your CV, you know, it would look good to have an Archibald finalist on your CV.
I don't know, I guess the establishments are very similar. It's all about the money, isn't it? At that level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Father Bob, I'd like to ask you both for a final word of advice. First of all, you, Luke.
Sure.
A word of advice about being an artist.
Be nice to people.
Great.
That's it.
Yep.
That's all you need to do. Just work hard, be nice to people.
Yep. Beautiful. Father Bob?
Oh, well, just the usual, I suppose, like there's no longer them and us, just we. That's all I want to be
Sure,
known
you try
for.
harder than that.
What?
You try harder than that.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank
Side by side we stick together. How's that?
That's better.
Any magpies? Good on you, comrades. And this is the town, after all, that pinched the bloody swans from my town. Come on, I've been holding back on that.
It's clear why this portrait has become is such a beautiful work of art. Your relationship is just
It's got nothing to do with
beautiful.
me. It's all you.
Yeah, what are you talking about? You've got to
It's all
deny
about
now.
you. No, I'm just saying it's all about you. It's all
It's not
about
about me at all.
your personality.
It's all about me.
Gets it across the line.
Anyway.
Well, I hope we see more
God,
of
we're
you,
not going home
both
in the
of
same
you,
plane.
in the future. Perhaps we should both leave, and we'll just leave Father Bob here.
Just leave the microphones on, you know.
We'll just leave you here, Father Bob. You're okay. You've got some water and stuff.
Yes, we can be here. Thank you.
Okay, Father
It's the
Bob.
only time I'll get in. This is the first and only time probably that I'll ever get into a beautiful art gallery. See? So I'm very grateful. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Father Bob and Luke Cornish, thank you both very much.